Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Reagan National Defense Forum, America's leading gathering of leaders from military, politics, industry, economics, and the thought leadership world. We're here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California, and our coverage here is sponsored by Leonardo DRS and L3 Technologies. And we're honored to have with us the man who's going to be the next chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Representative Adam Smith, Democrat from the great state of Washington. Sir, congratulations and thanks very much for the time.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's get right into the budgetary situation. You've made your priorities clear where you're going to put appropriate oversight. In some respects, it was great to hear you and Chairman Thornberry talk about bipartisanship and how actually some of the priorities don't change and that they aren't, the whole point is to get better security for the nation. There's a big debate, though, on the amount of spending. The president has reduced spending from 733 to 700. Jim Inhofe, the Senate Armed Services Committee chairman, is saying that 733 should be a floor. You've said that 700 should likely be a ceiling. We've got Jim Mattis and Inhofe and Mac Thornberry are going to go and visit the president next week. On Tuesday is my understanding to talk to him and Mick Mulvaney and to make the case along with Jim Mattis for more resources. Talk to us about how this is going to play out. I mean, is this going to be something where at the end of the day we're just going to split the middle and just end up at 716?
Well, first of all, the main goal is to get an agreement on all the discretionary spending bills. There's 12 different discretionary spending bills. We have 2 more years on the Budget Control Act, which sets a very tight ceiling on spending in all of those areas. We would like to get an agreement that gets rid of the Budget Control Act for those last 2 years. Second, it's going to be a leadership decision. It's going to be the White House. It's going to be, the leadership in the House, leadership in the Senate, in both parties who are going to have to decide what that number is. People like Senator Inhofe and I and Mac Thornberry will have input, but this is a leadership decision about what that number is, and it's balancing a whole bunch of different issues. For our job on the committee, our job is to, whatever the number they give us, we mark to it. So what those of us on the authorizing side think about what the number should be, we don't really control that.
Let me ask you then about some of the priorities within the measure. Everybody is talking about, well, on the one hand, you have the National Defense Strategy Commission that's arguing for almost $1 trillion in spending, right. A dramatic increase, and to have that sustained over a long period of time to realize the National Defense Strategy. You've always believed in strong defense spending, but you're also a fiscal hawk in a lot of ways where you want the deficit reduced.
What the balance is. I don't agree with the people who say that, defense is so important that, we spend what we have to and we don't pay any attention to it. And I also don't agree that we're necessarily safer because we spend more money. It depends on what we're spending it on. And I think there are a ton of efficiencies that can be found in the Pentagon. And we have to balance that against a $22 trillion federal debt, against domestic priorities such as infrastructure. All of that has to be balanced. And the one thing I feel very strongly about, we can protect this nation for a budget that's less than $700 billion. I strongly disagree with folks who say different. We certainly have looked at the Pentagon. We just got the reports on the audit. And clearly the Pentagon has issues to work on in terms of how they spend their money. And that's the biggest thing that I feel, is the notion that somehow we will not be safe if we don't spend $750 billion is wrong. It's not how much we spend, it's how we spend it. And that's what I'm really going to be focused on.
Well, talk to us a little bit about where you can find efficiencies, right? I mean, this is a holy grail and everybody's talking about it, but sometimes they don't find as much as they want to. And where do you think is where we can take risk in terms of capability? Because as Corey Shockey, who we talked to from IISS, said, innovation is also figuring out what you're not going to do. So talk to us on both of those poles on how you're going to be driving the agenda forward as chairman.
Well, first of all, there are a ton of efficiencies that are being found, and I, will praise the Pentagon. Secretary Mattis, they're going through program by program and finding savings. I just met with the Secretary of the Army, Mark Esper. He's found billions of dollars in going through the programs in areas where they don't really need to spend money. So, there is savings to be found within the budget. And then the other thing is, when you're prioritizing risk, I've mentioned, I don't think we need 5,000 nuclear weapons. Yes, we need to recapitalize our nuclear program. It's old, it's aging, it needs to be shored up. But there's plenty of money that we can save and still meet our national security needs. Instead of planning for how we could win a nuclear war, we need to adopt a deterrent strategy. One of our major countries that we're concerned about in the world is China. China has 250 nuclear missiles. That's it. Or nuclear warheads, I should say. They think that is a sufficient deterrent to meet their needs. We are way overspending, in my view, on nuclear weapons. And in terms of managing risk, I think that's a risk we can manage quite easily and still meet our national security needs. So I think there's plenty of areas to go.
Well, let me ask. Just two quick questions.
Sure.
First, on cyber.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's been highlighting the threat to this, but the situation is actually a lot more grave than I think most Americans recognize in terms of, you know, when you look at the totality of the penetrations, whether they're resident threats, whether they're the stealing of electronic warfare files or anything else. Talk to us a little bit about how you're going to approach that part of the portfolio. I know the speaker has a big AI initiative that's the Solarium group. We talked to Mike Gallagher a little bit. Talk to us about how you're going to approach the whole AI challenge. Excuse me, the whole cyber challenge,
yeah,
right?
I understand. Now, I think this is an area where, you know, we can transition. I think we're spending a lot of money on legacy programs that were important in the past, but what's the future? And the future is cyber. How can we start spending money on the things that are going to be crucial? Because everything we've got is dependent upon our networks working. You shut down those networks, you know, you can stop an aircraft carrier dead in its tracks in the middle of the sea. So we are really going to emphasize how we can better protect our cyber. And I think there's savings to be found there. You know, if cyber is the warfare of the future, we can get good at that for a lot cheaper than building, you know, a whole bunch of very expensive weapon systems. So, you know, I think there's savings to be found.
And do you think that there is going to be a sequester extension? There are some folks who are saying that if there's a big budget deal, sequester will get extended for another few years, or do you think it's just 2 years and it's over?
I don't know. I would oppose that. But, you know, we got a lot of votes that we got to pull together to make this happen. So I don't think that's a good idea, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen.
And on Afghanistan? Because that's going to be a hot issue as well.
No, it's getting to the point where we're basically, you know, we're going to have to prove that there's a value in us staying there and that there is a light at the end of that tunnel. I'm becoming concerned that we hear the same thing over and over again, that we're just this close to getting a peace deal, and if we just stick around for one more year, it's all going to work out. You know, it may be getting close to time to say, look, we just cannot fix this problem militarily, but we're going to try to work and get to peace negotiations going on right now. Thank you very much.